So today I'm going to be talking about why I think humanizing AI content is complete BS in a lot of cases. You've probably seen a ton of YouTube videos where they have AI content, then they do some prompting, and then they put it back into an AI detector like this, and then it says it's no longer detectable as AI, and then that's enough for them to put it on their website. It's now safe, good content, and I think that's completely wrong. And by the end of this video, I'll tell you why I think that is, as well as what I'm doing to use AI content to rank on Google safely and effectively. All right, let's get into it. But first of all, I'm Chris Gegis, and you probably know me from my other YouTube channel or my link building agency over at sirlinksalot.co or my Facebook group. Or maybe you've seen me on some podcasts or seen me around at some SEO conferences, but you can head over to my website for more information on me. And before we get into why I think humanizing AI content is complete BS, first let's get into the reason why it's not BS, and that one reason is for a better user experience. Because as you already know, or maybe you just learned in the Google leaks recently, it looks like Google is paying a lot more attention to clicks and user behavior than we thought before. If you haven't heard about that leak, you can go ahead and head over to my YouTube channel and watch the videos I've already made on that, and go ahead and give this video a like and give my channel a sub while you're at it if you're enjoying the content. So if you're humanizing your AI content because you want humans to have a better experience while they're reading it and you're not doing it for Google, then I think it's completely legitimate. But we'll go into this in more detail in just a minute, as well as some things you can do to improve your user experience with your AI content. So now let's talk about why it is BS. First of all, Google has said repeatedly that they don't care how content was created as long as users like it and then they deem it as quality content. You can see right here in their guidelines on AI generated content, the first heading right here, rewarding high quality content however it is produced. They also mention here, when it comes to automatically generated content, our guidance has been consistent for years, using automation, including AI, to generate content with the primary purpose of manipulating ranking in search results is a violation of our spam policies. So quality content is good. It doesn't matter if it's produced with AI or not, but if you're doing it in a way and they deem it that you're just trying to manipulate search rankings and get some SEO traffic, then it's a problem. Go ahead and read this document for more info on that. Additionally, if you've been paying attention to the HCU updates, the helpful content updates in the sites that were hit by that, a lot of these sites that were hit had no AI content on them at all. And these were supposedly updates that were targeting AI content. One example of a site like this is travellemming.com, and another example is the infamous housefresh.com. And one of my favorite examples of AI content that's still ranking well is if you Google best printer, which is quite a large keyword, scrolling down here to the number 2 result from The Verge right here. They created this article, which is just a complete joke, really, and they did it on purpose to really show that how you can manipulate Google, how AI content doesn't matter. Look at their title here, Best Printer 2024, Best Printer for Home Use, Office Use, Printing Labels, Printer for School, Homework Printer, You Are a Printer, We Are All Printers. Then the first half of the article, they just kind of rant about Google and SEO, and then they say we're just going to copy and paste some AI-generated spam, and then they do that right here. The rest of the article is just AI-generated stuff, but obviously they are still ranking quite well. Another reason is that AI generated content is still completely generic content, no matter if it's humanized or not. We did a podcast a while back with Kyle Roof on the Sir Links a Lot channel, and in that podcast, he mentioned that he thought AI content was essentially a fancy article spinner, and we agreed with him. But it was really the first time I had heard someone talk about it like that. And when you humanize your AI content, or you just change some of the words around to make it appear like it's not AI content, but the substance is really the same, you're really just doing the same thing. You're spinning the content in a more sophisticated way, but the content, the actual substance of the article is exactly the same. But again, we'll go into this in more detail later in the video of how you can avoid this situation. Lastly, we have here that the AI detectors are not to trick Google. Here we are over on originality.ai, which is the most famous AI checker. And first of all, if you scroll down this entire page, what you'll notice is they don't mention one thing anywhere on this page that says that their AI detector will help you put content on your website that is safe from Google penalizing you. And they do this for a reason, because they don't want to get in any trouble. Secondly, I watched a podcast with the founder of originality.ai, and he was a really cool guy, and he actually explained straight up in the podcast that their detector is not for you to put your content on your website and say, okay, it's safe from Google now. It's to check what your writers are doing and to make sure that they're not using AI when they say they're not using AI. So one, we have Google doesn't really care about AI content. Two, we have humanized AI content is still generic AI content, really. The substance is still the same. And three, the AI detectors are not for use on Google. So yes, the AI detector might say that the content is not produced by AI, but Google could still deem the content as generic, which is what we want to avoid. Because like Google says, they don't care how the content is produced as long as it's high quality and users like it, demonstrates EAT, all that stuff. So here's what you should be doing instead of trying to humanize your AI content. First of all, I want to start with a newsletter that was sent out by Mr. Alex Savvy over here. He's a good friend of mine. And he's got a cool newsletter, so I encourage you to sign up for it as well over at his website. And scrolling down here, this is something I've been kind of talking about for a while, but Alex put it really succinctly, and he gives us 3 key points of why sites are getting hit in the HCU updates. Number 1 is poor user retention and engagement, meaning a bad user experience essentially. Number 2 is what we've just been talking about a lot right now, low page quality and originality / information gain. So information gain, if you are subscribed to my channel, is probably something you've heard me mention a lot. We'll go into this more in just a second. And then number 3, overall website authority matters. So big websites are allowed to put less effort into their pages. So basically, Google's rules are for you, the little guy, not for these big websites like Forbes or The Verge or whatever else. It's just what the game is right now. And also, we definitely have to mention here that a lot of these sites getting hit in HCU, it doesn't really matter what kind of content they're using. Content, human content, whatever. It seems like the main problem for a lot of these sites was how they were monetized, and Google is just hitting them because they are affiliate websites or ad-based. And so for a lot of these sites, it doesn't matter how much you, quote, humanize your content, they're going to hit you for these other things that they are still deeming create this kind of web of low quality signals. So first of all, let's cover backlink authority, and we're just going to do this really quick because this entire video is supposed to be about humanizing AI content, not backlinks, but we do have to mention it briefly. Yes, backlink authority is important. Yes, backlink authority matters now more than ever in SEO. Definitely head over to my channel if you want more information on that because I put out a lot of content about backlinks. But it's also important to note that backlink authority alone is not going to save you if your content is seen as low quality and generic and you have bad user experience. Unless you have extreme backlink authority like some of these monster sites. Because if you remember, we looked at House Fresh, they have a DR 58 and they crashed down to 0. And then Travel Lemming with DR 6 also down to 0. So having this high backlink authority alone does not save you. But it can definitely help, especially if your authority is higher than these sites. And once you get into the 70s, 80s, or even 90s, then it seems like a lot of the rules just kind of don't apply as much. So you can focus on backlink authority to help you, but this is kind of a long game and a very expensive and time-consuming game. So next, let's talk about user experience and how you can improve that in your content. I've got this checklist here for editing AI content that involves a bunch of steps to help improve user experience as well as information gain, which is the next subject that we're going to talk about. I might give this away at some point if people keep asking for it. But anyways, the main goal with user experience is to prevent users from pogo sticking and going back to the search results and clicking on another result because yours did not answer their question. This is basically the worst thing that a user can do. And my number 1 tip from keeping users from pogo sticking is to give them the answer they're looking for as fast as possible. Back in the day, we used to just want to keep them on the page as long as possible and make them scroll all the way down the page to get the answer. We don't want to do that anymore. The first thing you can do is include a key takeaway section at the top of your content. So for example, over here on the Sir Links a Lot blog, when you scroll down right here, we've got the introduction. And the first thing we've got here is the key takeaway section, which just tries to give the user the answer as fast as possible. Aside from this, it's also good to try to keep your content short and sweet. That doesn't mean that your article has to be short. It's still good to try to cover all the topics to be seen as covering the main topic fully. But it means you don't have to drone on and on and on and you say a bunch of useless stuff that doesn't need to be said. Each sentence should bring new value to the reader. And it's also important to make sure you have a well-structured article, which just means the headings that you're using and the order that your article progresses in makes sense and keeps the user engaged rather than them being like, okay, this is just kind of blabbing on about a bunch of stuff that I don't want to read about, so I'm going to go back and find a better article. So a good example of that would be on this article, which is how to deal with the dreaded k.html spam backlinks. If the first paragraph right here was basically something like, what are backlinks? Or why are backlinks important? These are kind of these classic SEO articles that we do not want to write anymore. Next up, we have remove filler content, words, or phrases that add no value. So ChatGPT, as you know, likes to add a lot of these kind of fluffy words, these words that make no sense, that no one ever writes. For example, in the ever-evolving SEO digital landscape. I don't know who wrote that stuff or where it's getting it from, but you need to take all that kind of stuff out. It doesn't add anything to your article. People don't like to read it. Next up, repetition. I've noticed ChatGPT or AI content, they will repeat the same thing many times in an article. So for example, over here in the k.html spam backlinks article, they might say the same thing over and over, which is spam backlinks can impair your digital presence online or something like that. Or literally say 50 times that spam backlinks are bad for your SEO. The reader gets it after the first time. We don't have to keep repeating it to them. Take all the repetition out. Another thing I notice a lot in AI content is it likes to constantly reintroduce and conclude sections. Meaning a lot of the times when you have a section like this, they'll have kind of a mini introduction as well as a wrap up or a conclusion for every single section. Take that stuff out. Readers don't need it. Next up, it's good to have a strong introduction with a hook, some stats or numbers, something that can really hook the reader and make them interested. And last up, it's good to use industry jargon instead of just using the way that ChatGPT or AI content speaks a lot. So for example, for SEO related articles, AI will say something like the ever evolving digital landscape or will increase your brand's digital presence online. A lot of these like very flowery terms. So instead of saying increase your brand's organic visibility, why don't you just say something like increase your rankings? Or when you're talking about using tools, you can mention things like DR or authority. Rather than saying well-trusted, respected websites that Google loves, just say high authority sites. So speak to the reader like they're used to being spoken to on the topic. So next up, let's talk about information gain. I think this is super, super, super important. And this is really the main reason why I think humanizing AI content really misses the mark. Google has this patent over here talking about information gain, but the gist of it is that if your article doesn't add anything new, your article is seen as generic. It's actually quite simple. And as SEOs, we really already know how this works, but maybe we kind of thought about it in a different way. My favorite way to kind of demonstrate this is when you take a tool like Surfer SEO or like Neuron Writer, they have all of these keywords or entities or whatever you want to call them on the right-hand side that they want you to include in your article. Because based on what all of the other articles have, they know that if you include these things, there's a good chance that you'll be covering the topic fully, or Google will see you as covering the topic fully. The problem with this, however, is that if you just have all of this stuff in your article, you are really just having the same exact article as everyone else. So in the past, we would say, hey, that's okay, just try to have the same thing as everyone else, but maybe kind of put them all together and then that's your article. Now we're having to put a lot more emphasis on creating something unique, something that's a little bit different from everything else, something that has some unique information in it. And how I think about information game is I think about entities and attributes. It sounds complicated, but it's really not. So entities are basically nouns. So for example, you could have one entity is cat. And then we have this sentence right here, cat is big. And big right here would be considered an attribute of this entity. So it's essentially just an adjective. But it could also be numbers as well. There are 7 cats. So when I'm thinking about information gain, I want there to be other entities or nouns in my article that other articles don't have. And for the entities that are the same as the other articles, I want there to be different attributes like big or like 7, which are different. So this is how the algorithm mathematically equates if your article is original or not. So for example, if we have an article about the X mattress and no other article has said it is 10% softer than whatever else, you could include this in your article. This is brand new information in Google's eyes. Or maybe all of the other articles are saying the mattress is soft or expensive, and then your article says that the mattress is durable. No one mentioned that before. So how can you do this? My favorite way to do it is just to honestly to use my brain, or to have your author use their brain, and to take some creative liberties, meaning they can make stuff up if they need to. Of course, firsthand experience definitely helps if you have it. The firsthand experience here is definitely my favorite way. So for example, when I'm writing any article about link building for the So Links a Lot blog, I can very easily add in a bunch of firsthand experience that no one else has. So in doing this, I'm automatically going to be adding in new entities and attributes that no other article has because it's just my experience. They haven't done it. And if you are writing for a brand, it could be good to inject things into the article about your brand and how your brand feels about certain things. Because, of course, if you're talking about your brand and how your brand does things and your brand stance on this, then this is automatically new information as well. If you need additional help, you could come over to ChatGPT and write a prompt something like this. What things do the top 3 articles for Best Mattress 2024 not mention that readers might want to know about? And it gives us some ideas here. Or you could just look at the articles, look at their headings, and try to think of things that they're not mentioning. And you can have new sections. And these new sections, these new subtopics that no one has talked about, will inject a lot of new entities and new attributes just by the nature of what they are. It's new information that they didn't talk about. So like I said before here, information gain is really, I think, the most important thing to think about when you're putting AI content on your website, because it doesn't matter how much you've made the article sound less like AI and more like a human. If the article is really just saying the exact same thing but wrapped up differently with different kind of words, then it's not really bringing anything new to the table, and Google could deem it as low quality or generic content. The way I like to think about it is if you have 2 GIFs here and they are wrapped differently, but inside the gift is the exact same thing. This is how I think a lot of people go about humanizing their content, which is completely wrong. They just change the wrapping on it, but really the substance, the entities, and the attributes are the exact same thing. First of all, monetization is super important. It might not matter how good your content is. If you are an affiliate site or an ads-based site, Google might hit you, and we can't really explain exactly why they're doing that at this point in time. But with more testing and more prodding, I'm sure that the SEO community will eventually figure it out. Next up, we should be improving the user experience of our AI articles before we put them on our site. And you can do that with a key takeaway section and giving the reader the answer as fast as possible, having a well-structured article, keeping things short and sweet, having a good introduction, using industry jargon instead of the fluffy ChatGPT words, and removing a lot of the ChatGPT BS, like we're going to delve into, or removing all the repetitious introductions and conclusions, and making sure it's not repeating itself like 50 times in the same article. Next up, what I think is the most important thing is information gain. And again, that's just adding in new entities and new attributes into your article so that mathematically Google sees your article as original and not the same exact thing as everyone else. That doesn't mean not to try to include a bunch of these other keywords that should go in your article, because it's still true when you write about this subject, you are going to mention a lot of these other keywords and entities, but you need to be bringing something new to the table as well. And then lastly, we have backlink authority, because of course a lot of these high authority websites seem to be getting away with things that smaller sites cannot. So work on your off-page trust signals with Google, i.e. building quality backlinks over time. And again, check the channel for more information on that. And last up, remember that all of this stuff works together. So let's say you have a very high authority website, but you have really bad user experience and no information gain, you could still get hit. Or let's say you have a good user experience, but you have no information gain, so your article is seen as completely generic and you have super low authority, so you're seen as can definitely still get hit. Or you can have all three of these things being very good. However, your monetization could be affiliate or ads, and then Google could decide to kill your website because they don't like people making money this way anymore. Not my choice. I don't think it's fair, but it is what it is at this point in time. All right, guys, that's it for now. Let me know if you want this checklist. And go ahead and give the video a like and my channel a sub if you're enjoying the content, and I will see you next time. All right, bye-bye.